Hi there, you've reached Plus Health Company's tutorial on how to avoid being chair-shaped. So the thing about our society and the way our lives are these days, we tend to find ourselves sitting much more of the time. And unfortunately, we humans were not designed to be doing that. We were designed to move. So it's just thinking around posture when seated, exercises when sitting, and what you can do in standing to help make sure you do not become chair-shaped.
So we're going to look at the different ways our postures can develop when we're sat, and we tend to see in our physio practice that people sit into a couple of typical categories, neither which are ideal. So is this you? So we see a lot of people who tend to lead around or poke forward with the chin. Now, if you imagine what's happening at the front of the body in this postural type, we see a shortening of your abdominal muscles, so this area here. We see a shortening of the muscles at the front of the hips, which we call our hip flexors, and then we see a lengthening of the neck muscles at the front. But then if we look at the back of our body, we see this nice attractive curve here. So the muscles at the back of our body can become lengthened, but lengthened muscles, because not at their ideal length, are by nature weakened as well. And again shortened through the back of the neck. So converse to that, the opposite posture, which is not ideal, is the sitting too upright, which is where the confusion comes from, because often people, when they see a physio, they tend to sit up nice and tall, but this again is not ideal. So if we look at the back of the body first this time, these muscles in the back, in the lower back, become shortened and tight. We are bracing with the shoulder blades, so the muscles that sit between the shoulder blades again can become shortened and tight. We know short, tight muscles are not very comfortable. And then at the front of the body, whereas before the tummy muscles we see can become shortened, at the front they can become lengthened and weakened. And again, we've got the same problem with your hip flexor muscles becoming shortened and tight, which again is not ideal.
So to avoid either of these, let's talk around some of the exercises that we can do once we've thought about our ideal sitting position. So really what we want to be doing is making sure that our feet are able to reach the ground, and so depending on what you're wearing in terms of your footwear, etc., that may be influencing. And typically it's better to sit at a height where your knees are slightly below the level of your hips, so that it doesn't have a negative effect on your pelvis. Thinking about your pelvis and where you're sitting on your sitting bones. So if you put your hands under your buttocks, your own buttocks, just to be clear, and move your pelvis back and forth, you should feel like you're able to find two knobbly bones in there, and there should be one on each side, folks.
They are there somewhere. You have to dig a little bit to start finding mine.
So when Kate has located her knobbly sitting bones, called the ischial tuberosities if you want to use the jargon, then we want to then think about a feeling of being lengthened upwards, maybe visualising a little string on the top of our head guiding us upwards, and a feeling of natural width across the front of the shoulders. So not this idea of squeezing the shoulder blades together, because we humans, we're naturally a little bit round shouldered, and that's our norm. So working from here as a place to exercise can be really useful, particularly if you're not able to get up and move so regularly and you just want to maintain some activity whilst you are sat. So pelvic tilting can be a really good place to start, particularly if you get a stiff or a sore back, and also for the hips. So this idea of rocking through the pelvis in each direction, feeling yourself move on and off those sitting bones. And you can do that a good 5 or 6 times in each direction, and then just remember to settle in that midpoint. Another really useful exercise, whether you be sat on a dining chair, an office chair, or although not so good if they're on wheels, they tend to spin a little bit, but also to think about spine twist. So this idea of rotating to one side to try to look behind you like you would if you were perhaps reversing in the car, and doing that to each side. Sometimes using the hand on the knee can be really a nice way of helping you get that little bit further. And sometimes using the hand at the back of the chair, depending on what you're sat on, can help you get some overpressure, but that may or may not be appropriate for you, so just check if you're safe to be adding that overpressure. Another exercise we love in Plus Pilates is called bow and arrow. So lengthen your arms ahead of you, as the lovely Kate is demonstrating now, and imagine yourself pulling back on a bow and arrow and then returning. So as you do that, really think about lengthening the fingertips at the front forwards, but also lengthening the fingertips back. So you get this really lovely sense of openness through the chest, but also good rotation in the mid-back, which is very important for our sitting postures. In terms of breath control, as you're aware of yourself breathing out, open out, and as you breathe in, return your way in. So you might like to try 2 or 3 repetitions to each side, and again, you can do this as regularly and as often as you like. Another exercise more along the strength focus rather than the mobility focus, as we've looked at to press, is called a tricep dip. Now obviously you need to use a safe chair and make sure that you feel confident with this one, but it's a useful way of keeping some strength in the back of the upper arms particularly. So Kate's probably hoping I'm going to ask her to do one now before she fades thick and fast. So bend through the elbows, keeping them pointed inwards and back behind you, and then extend the elbows as you breathe out, bending, and as you breathe in, lengthening. So you can try a number of repetitions there, and you have lots of different ways you can progress that. But this is particularly relevant if you are somebody who may need to get down and back up off the floor. If you'd like to do some more of your Plus Pilates repertoire and you find that tricky, it's one of the ways that you might find it a little bit easier. Getting up and down off the mat and having a chair beside you can be a real help. Another good challenging one is the sit to stand exercise. So with your hands across your chest, so you're not using them for support, make sure your feet are slightly positioned back behind your knees, and then stand up and sit down. Really stand up so you're totally upright, and then sit down and just make sure the chair is still there behind you. So keep that going. And your challenge is to time yourself doing 10 repetitions. So you're doing that as briskly and as safely as you feel you're able to do them. And that's a good way of getting some energy and some strength and getting a little bit warmer as well through the muscles in your legs, which of course are so important to maintain. If you could progress that, then take your weight onto one leg. So rather than a 50-50 share, see if you're able to do that either fully through one side or perhaps maybe 80-20. And you'll notice that there is a lot more challenge doing it that way, but it's also a progression and a way to develop your strength training. Your next seated exercise is called through range quadriceps. So these are the muscles that sit at the front of your thigh, and they play a key role in helping to keep the support of your knee joints, of which you have 2. We can talk about those in another tutorial. So when you're ready, straighten and extend one knee, pull your toes up towards you, hold a moment, and then control your way back. Now sometimes people think that the upwards part of the movement is the exercise and the downwards part is not, but actually both parts count. So you just really want to think about making sure that you're controlling there and controlling back. Now in terms of repetitions, we really want to be thinking about doing high repetition if endurance is our aim, but more often than not, we need to be loading ourselves with something like an ankle weight and working to a lower set of repetitions, but maybe more sets of those. So perhaps if you can use a guide of trying somewhere between 8 to 10 repetitions and something between 2 to 3 sets, then you should feel a little fatigued in the thigh muscles at the end of that, and that's a really good thing when it comes to strength training. So they're the exercises we can nicely do when we're sitting. But what about the things we can do to avoid us becoming chair-shaped?
So in order to do that, we need to stand up. So we are looking at firstly, thinking about where we talked about needing to lengthen. So if we've been sat, we know we can become shortened in our abdominal muscles and lengthen through the back, but the back joints or the vertebrae can also become stiff. So we want to look at ways we can get this moving here and the ways we can get it lengthen through the front of our body. So a nice way we can do this is with our lumbar extension exercises. So I'm going to ask Jenny, we'll lean backwards now, and I'll talk you through that. Okay. So what we don't want you to do is just to hinge at one point or stick your hips forwards, okay? What ideally we're looking for is that nice even curve through the spine. So as you lift and lean backwards, we want to think about lifting through our chest bone firstly, and then curving back. And this leads to a nice even distribution through the spine, so we're not causing any discomfort in the lower back. This should feel like a really nice stretch. Okay, you're also opening out through the front of the hips as well. Okay. So our next thing we can look at is our side bend. So I'm just going to ask Jenny if she will slide her hands down either side of her thigh. So imagine you're reaching your fingertips to the knee or to the floor. And we're aiming to stretch out either side of the body, down the waist here. So we've got some really big muscles that go from our shoulder right through, down to our lower back, even into the hip, okay? And by lifting your arm overhead, we will progress that stretch even further. You'll feel even more of a nice stretch through the side there. So our hip flexor stretch, perhaps it could be argued one of, well, my favourite stretch to do, because I know how tight your hip flexors can become. So in this position, we're looking, again, thinking about opening up through the front, so we want to pelvic tilt, so you're thinking about your pelvic headlamps tilting up towards your head, and this is going to really open up through the front of your hips. We also lift our chest bone nice and high again. Now, the hip flexor muscles aren't just a muscle that flex our hip, they're also a stabilising muscle because they come right through the hip and attach to the spine as well. So they're a very important muscle. Okay, so we're opening up and lengthening through the front of the hip. Now you might want to progress this further by reaching the arm over to the side. Again, this is also opening up through the hip, but also lengthening through our side here. We've got lots of connections with our connective tissue that join our shoulder through to our lower body. Okay, so we'll just ease off from that. Okay, and then moving further down the leg, we're going to work into our quad stretch. So again, stretching through the front of the hip, but also down the front of the thigh. So in this exercise, we want to make sure we keep our knees together. We are going to tuck our pelvis under again, so pelvic headlamps up towards the head. And then you might want to increase the stretch by bringing that heel further in towards the bottom. Now this can be quite a struggle for a lot of people who may not have the range of movement in your hip or your knee. And so it's nice to loop a towel around your foot so you're not having to reach back and over and extend through the spine. So again, all we need to do is that little pelvic tilt, and you'll be surprised how much of a stretch you feel through the front of your thigh. There. Okay, so we'll release that off.
And you might just want to be thinking more than ever about getting up little and often, advisably to get up maybe around every 30 minutes or so. If that means setting a timer on your phone, or perhaps getting a little phone alarm to ping at you on a regular basis, or in the commercial breaks if you're watching something on TV. But if you'd like to know more about office ergonomics and seated posture when you're at your workstation, check into our tutorial on that. Thank you.